Well, you're back in the smoke-filled room, or maybe you're here with us for the first time. We've got some new people who told us they subscribed, so we hope you're watching this week. This is episode 100, and I don't even know anymore. But we're glad to have you with us. This podcast is especially from people who are center right, for people who are center right. So we're going to say some things you like. We're going to say some things you don't like. Anybody who says they agree with Chris or Patrick Pfingsten automatically gets the boot from the show immediately. So that's just the only rule we have on this podcast. But otherwise, we're glad to have you with us in the smoke-filled room. I'm going to introduce our guests and get right into the agenda because it's a pretty long one this week. Let's start with Patrick Pfingsten. You know him, you've heard him, you've seen him, you hate him. He's the founder, editor, and producer of the Illinoize, admittedly also a good friend, and is the afternoon host for WMAY News. What's going on, buddy?
Gentlemen and Chris, hello.
It's always good to have you with us. You have your afternoon show, but we got you this week, or we got you today, because you did the morning show instead of the afternoon show. So it's pretty rare we actually get Patrick anymore.
I did, and I'm tired and I'm grumpy, and you're probably going to see it for the next hour and a half.
Yeah, well, I'm not tired and grumpy, so there you go. As we've said before, the over the couple months before the primary, we're trying to have on Republican candidates about one a week who are running for races around the state that are within the margin of being able to be competitive in 2026. We're prioritizing races that have primaries first. So we've had some candidates on in previous weeks. We're working on having more candidates. We've invited them all. This week, we've got Dillan Vancil. We have invited his opponent. We have not heard back yet, but we're going to keep offering the opportunity to join us from his opponent. But in the meantime, we get to hear from Dillan Vancil, who's a candidate in the 17th Congressional District. He's a small business owner and a school board member. Dillan, what's going on? Glad to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here, enjoying this blistering heat wave we've gotten this last couple of days. But appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, I was always somebody who loved the winter, like genuinely loved it, but I must be real old now that I've turned 40 because I don't love it anymore. I'm not gonna lie. We
Yeah,
also have we also have with us Core's political experts. We've got Michael, we've got Chris. I have nothing pithy for you guys this week, showing just how tired and cranky I may be, but it's good to see you guys. Glad to have you with us still.
Good to
I
be here.
want to, I want to say it for the record that Colin's admission that he used to like winter shows that he's never knocked on a door before, or at least it's been a very long time since Colin's knocked on a door or ran a field program. So,
Yeah, it's also been a long time since I've had to walk in a parade. I don't have to go to rubber chicken dinners anymore. I take this as a badge of honor. I'm an entrepreneur who built up a company so that I didn't have to do that stuff anymore. So I'm not ashamed of it.
now Michael and I just got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But I still think, based on the number of doors I knocked on in my first 10 years in politics, you're probably still catching up. But we can maybe run some numbers later.
I'll call up the Democrats to get my van numbers back, okay?
There you go. All right, well, let's talk politics, especially because as we record this today, it's February 5th, which is the first day of early voting. It's early voting at your clerk or your election authority. So in smaller counties, it's a little bit more normal for people to be doing early voting this early. In the larger counties, especially in Chicagoland, very few people show up this early, though some do. Most people wait until 15 days before when satellite locations and permanent sites, as they're called, open up. But this is the first day you can legally vote in the primary in Illinois. So let's talk politics first before we even get into policy. And I think there's something we got to talk about before we get into state politics, which is just where we are right now as Republicans in this country. Because if you've seen coming out of Texas, what just happened this weekend, it should scare you. We saw a special election for a state Senate seat in Texas, and it was about a 30-point shift from what had happened previously. It's a district that Republicans won by 20 in 2022. Trump won it by 17 in 2024. We just lost it by 14. And if you think money had anything to do with it, Republicans spent $2.4 million on the seat. Democrats only spent $200K. It was not money that caused this seat to flip this dramatically. And I've heard from a lot of people that this is a warning sign for them, which frankly scares me because if you haven't been seeing the warning lights blinking really, really, really bright red for like a year now, then you have no idea what you're doing in politics. But fine, whatever. Glad to see people are finally picking up on this. And I've heard some say, I can't figure out why this is happening. They can't figure out why Republican numbers on the economy and cost of living have cratered because even though some things have improved, the average voter doesn't feel like their life is less expensive. They don't feel like the economy is better. It's the same problem Biden had, but in reverse. Immigration, voters have really gone against us on immigration. Flip on the news, you can see why. But there's more than that. You go to Illinois and you can see what caused some of the shift of why we're losing. I'm just going to bring up a couple things here, and I'm sure Patrick's going to want to vent with me on some of these. Go to the Daily Illini. In the last week, a story broke that the Illini Republicans made a post, and usually I'll have Lane bring these posts up in post so you can see them. But this is not one post or one image I ever want on anything associated with me, so we're not going to bring it up. But it's an image of ICE holding a gun to Alex Preddy's back with the text saying, "Only traitors help invaders." And in their post, they talk about how they stand with ICE. They talk about how, here, what, I'm going to get this right, calling people traitors that don't agree. And here we go. Here's the line. The mandate of our brave public servants, domestic and abroad, to fell the enemies of the United States of America. They have since taken down the image and slightly edited the post. But if you're wondering why we're losing, it's crap like this. But I got two more examples before I finally shut up. Let's go to the 8th Congressional District, where a Republican candidate, Kevin Aki, I don't know how to say it properly, AKE, is one of the 4 Republican candidates in the 8th District, and he spent the entire time with the Daily Herald editorial board attacking people for their faith, other Republicans for their faith, telling a Jewish candidate that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah, and telling one of the Catholic candidates that she believes in a false pope. There's a whole lot more to it, and I'm sure, I know Patrick's angry about this, so I'm sure he'll give more details. And let's add one more just to keep getting myself in trouble here. Jeannie Hives on social media posting that the Civil War 2.0 has actually already begun, and saying that the left has engaged in violent attacks, not hundreds, but thousands of occasions against ICE. And this is not the behavior of a grassroots protest movement. This is the behavior of an army of covert operatives with special protections, comparing it to 1917 Russia. If you're wondering why we're losing, it's crap like this. We have a very limited window to get our crap together so that good candidates who deserve the best chance to try to win, let's say people like our guest here, Dylan, who deserve a chance to go to the voters and say why they think they're better than their opponent. Right now, with our failures on policies that matter to the voters and just this stupidity that we can't seem to get our feet out of our own mouths, we're not even going to give our candidates a chance in the next election. A 30-point swing in Texas, a district that Trump won by 17, and we just lost it. This is where we're headed, guys, if we don't get our act together as Republicans. I'll get off my my rant here, but if anyone else has thoughts, feel free to jump in.
Well, what I'll say to start is the window, as you call it, I think is already closed. I think the die may already be cast for Republicans, not only in Illinois, but across the country in many places this year, just based on, ICE is going to have a role, and I think a lot of the public discourse between now and November, especially if they double and triple down. And Caroline Leavitt made a comment today that said that they wouldn't rule out having DHS agents at polling places in November, which is just bonehead bonkers bullshit stuff. There are big issues inside the Republican tent right now, more than just Donald Trump and the crazy stuff that comes from him. Right there, you and I, Collin, shared a focus group a couple of months ago that was of young people, young conservatives that were essentially pro-Nazi, right? I mean, the comments, the things that these people said were horrifying, and I'm scared to death that where young people on the right are coming from now, and when you see so much stupidity, so much missing of the message that Republicans could and should use to stay in the game. I don't think the window is closing, right? And in Texas, this Texas thing this weekend isn't the issue, right? A special election is special, but the compounding of all of these trends. If you're just now saying, "Oh heck, this is bad," then the train's already passed. This they're I don't know how that train gets stopped and turned around so that Republicans can fix it between now and November.
Well, I hear you. I just think we have to do something. We have to change course. We have to give our candidates a shot because we've got candidates at core. We all have candidates we're supporting in various races. And I'd at least like them to have a shot. But the last time that the electorate was this against us, I remember Peter Roskam going to a door. He'd tell the story. He went to a door of a close family friend and they said, I like you, Peter, but I'm going to vote against you to send a message to Washington. I mean, that's where we're at right now, where you could have a good candidate who stays on message, who talks about cost of living and, the issues that matter to voters. And right now, they're not going to be given a shot. And so we need to do something. And we, as in national Republicans, I'm begging them, and I am behind the scenes, by the way, begging them repeatedly, we've got to change course. Trump seems to get the message a little bit. He finally said this week that his administration could use a softer touch on immigration. I mean, there's some finally movement of improvement. They're pulling immigration agents out of ICE. They're finally talking about cost of living, finally, and a little bit too much pretending like things are great, but at least there's a little bit of effort. But we got to move harder. We got to move faster because it's February 5th. November elections are not that far away. So we got to get our act together at every level here.
The frustrating part for me is that the Republican Party came out of 2024 one of the most broad coalitions that the party had ever seen. You saw extreme shifts to Republicans from Hispanics, among young voters, among Asian American voters. This was a real coalition for Donald Trump and gave him some type of mandate to produce change in this country. We really haven't seen that up until this point. There's polling coming out of Rasmussen this week that says Donald Trump's approval rating with 18 to 29-year-olds is down to 33%. 33%.
Which, by the way, Rasmussen is the most Republican of all of the pollsters. So just to give you context.
And they're coming out with polling this week, apparently, that's supposed to show that voters think the economy was better under Biden than it is under Trump. And when those types of numbers are coming out of the Republican pollster, things are really, really bad right now. The president is on the record saying he wants to keep housing prices high for young Americans not to be able to buy them. Why he chooses to say these things, I'm not particularly sure. And now we have this ICE problem where we're balancing performative cruelty on one hand while also balancing trying to withdraw the entire operation. Trump said this week that he's only going to send ICE to places where the local officials ask nicely for them to come in. So nothing's getting accomplished either way. You're not fulfilling the campaign promise that you're actually going to deport criminal illegal immigrants, which, again, is extremely popular in every poll, even up until this point. So we're pulling back from that while also maintaining this ICE presence, which seems rudderless. They're hiring these people off the streets to become ICE agents with little to no training whatsoever, and we're expecting a good outcome here. There's not a lot of momentum. There's not a lot of effort being put in by the administration or talking heads in Washington to actually provide any direction towards us, Republican consultants or operatives on the ground. We're not getting anything that's trickling down from above out of Washington, and we're just expected to, formulate some type of message that's going to resonate with the American voters. The people who voted for Trump in 2024 are moving away because nothing's being accomplished, and the Republican base, they just tooting along thinking everything's all fine and dandy. I'm worried about the Republican base because they think everything's fine and there's no work being put in here. And this is where I think goes to Collin's point, is that the Republican Party does still need to do things to produce a quality product in the 2026 election. Because for so long, even in 2024, the Republican Party in the state of Illinois has done next to nothing. Be that at the county level, be that at the state representative level, be that at the congressional level, there has been little to nothing going on in so many of these campaigns. And we can't expect the dog to catch the car this time because Trump certainly isn't as popular as he was at the time of the 2024 general election. So something needs to change, be it from the top in Washington, where we actually can get a cohesive message out of the administration that resonates with the American people, or there needs to actually be some productivity on the ground from the Republican Party, which honestly, I don't know which one's more likely to happen at this point.
Well, I think one thing that we need to learn here is your message has to resonate with the voters, and it's going to be backed up with something that they can hold on to. And Republicans have struggled with having a positive message, having this is what we're going to do to make your life better kind of approach. I'm going to use an example here, and I don't mean to pick on this individual because we're going to talk about the governor's race in just a second. But before we do, this is a really good example. Ted Dabrowski posting on X or Twitter, where he was posting about school choice, and we're actually going to talk about school choice in a little bit. And he said, "I've been fighting against our failed schools for years." I'm not going to comment on the policy, and I know he's trying to win a Republican primary, but this is the Republican message, whether it was coming from IPI or Wire Points or Dabrowski or from the party. For years, we've been coming at everything from that sort of a negative angle. I'll read it again. I've been fighting against our failed schools for years. You know what the average voter hears? I've been fighting against our schools. That's how that comes across to the average voter. I get the point that he's trying to make, but this has been our struggle. This is why we really struggle to resonate with the average voter, is because we approach things in Illinois, especially, with such a negative approach. And Pritzker comes at it, and the Democrats come at it from such a positive approach that even though they're lying and gaslighting voters most of the time, voters are more compelled to agree with them because they're still in Illinois for a reason. The ones who could have left have left. The ones who are here are either stuck here or they're plotting their exit, when they can do it. They don't want to hear how awful things are. They want to know you've got a plan to make them better. They want to hear some positivity out of you. And we really, really struggle with that as Republicans to present a message. Yes, things need to get better. You can talk about where things need to improve, but do so from a positive perspective. But we can't even do that. And I teach a whole class on this, on how voters will reject you intuitively before they even hear your words. And that is the problem with the Republican Party, especially in Illinois, is we're being rejected before they ever hear the words. So you can have the best message. I'm a messaging expert, one of the top ones in the country. I make a lot of money on it. But it doesn't matter how good your message is if they never even listen to it. And that is our problem right now, is because voters are feeling negative thoughts, negative feelings towards national Republicans. They're feeling those same negative feelings, if not more of them, towards Illinois Republicans, because we're always so negative and nasty. And then we've been painted as extreme. We can't even get our message in front of them. We've got to learn how to communicate with voters in a way that they're actually going to listen to what we have to say. We've got a lot of work to do, but if we can't figure that out, we're never going to win an election.
Well, and I think you look at some of this polling, they ask people about their approval rating of the Democratic Party as well, and, it's 22%, right? So it's a lot of these.
And our polls, Michael, our polls in Illinois show the Democratic Party in Illinois is just as unpopular as the Republican Party. So the opportunity is huge. That's why we're so frustrated, because we could win. It's not as if we're getting dominated.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, people, the average voter dislikes us and they dislike them, right? There are opportunities there, but I think part of that is going to require people calling out bullshit when they see it, like those examples that you gave earlier. I mean, the Daily Herald having that guy on they shouldn't have even interviewed that guy, right? I didn't even know he existed. And the one interview where he was criticizing Jews
the Herald's
and Catholics,
fault for bringing him on. He's a candidate.
Yeah, but I'm saying they shouldn't have.
Republicans should have called them out. I mean, we just talked last week about a Republican candidate who was questioning the Holocaust. Now we've got a candidate this week who's attacking people for their religious faith. I mean, it's incumbent on Republicans to say, yeah, you know what, I don't stand for this. Same with the Illini Republicans. Yeah, it's dumb kids making a dumb mistake, but man, that's a really big one. You have to call this out. And yeah, people like Jeannie Ives, who I know is very popular with certain segments of the base in the state, but saying we're in a civil war, you can't say we don't want to the left is inciting violence when you're actively inciting violence on the right. We can't continue to stand on our high horse here when we're going to be hypocrites. The voters see right through that.
But this comes down to a more fundamental problem, right? There's this belief among Republicans, whether it's party leaders all the way down to primary voters, that believe if they just turn out the base, Republicans are magically going to win. There are not enough Republicans or conservatives alone in this state to win a statewide election, which means Republicans have to find a way to bring moderate, suburban, independent women and men back into the fold who have been rushed out of the party and the coalition since 2016. They have to find a way to start clawing them back. And stupid shit like this is not the way to do it. It only pushes them farther away and more into the arms of the suburban GPAC moms that say the right things for those moderate suburban voters to like them and be afraid of Republicans.
Well, and that was going to be my last point. So let me bring this up. And Lane, I'm going to have you bring up some graphs in post from Ross Hunt, who had a really good post about this, because I keep hearing about this and we keep trying to refute it on this podcast, not because we dislike the people who are saying it or just always want to disagree with them, because I'm on record as having backed them when they're right, even when people don't like who's saying it. So it's not that. It's just the data, the facts do not back up this idea that if we just turn out the Republican base in Illinois, if we just get every Trump supporter from 2024 out to the polls, we'll magically win in 2026. We continue to debunk that. And Texas just better have put the final nail in the coffin for that, because Lane's going to show the graphs on screen. The primary elector, not the primary, the special election electorate, the people who showed up in this election that just moved 30 points, 31 points to the left. The people who showed up, that electorate was 51% Republican, 35% Democrat, 14% independent. And yet the Dem got 57% of the vote, when the Republican only got 43. That shows you this was an electorate made up of a majority, a significant majority of Republicans who voted Democrat. We've been telling you over and over, listen, I own a polling company. I've got the data. I have not just the data. I've got 30 different projects that poor Chris, Michael, and Abe and our team have had to run, because I don't say anything until I've got facts to prove it. And I'm telling you, 30x, I've got the facts to prove here that the problem for Republicans is not a turnout problem. It is not a problem to get Trump supporters to the polls. Yes, you need to work on turnout. You always do in an off-cycle election. But the problem right now for Republicans is that former Republicans have left the party in droves. They've either become independents or they voted Democrats several cycles in a row now. It's a serious problem. I'm not some guy who constantly goes out there bashing Trump and bashing Republicans and says, the conservatives are the worst. That's not me. You guys know that. I'm telling you in the data, and Texas just proved it yet again, that this whole thing pushed by a few people on the right, that if you just go get all the most conservative Republicans to the polls, we're going to magically win. It is not backed by the data.
Well, and just look at the presidential numbers from 2024. Kamala Harris underperformed Joe Biden in Illinois by 400,000 votes compared to 2024 to 2020. Trump stayed essentially flat, and Trump still lost by 11 points, right? The numbers just simply aren't there, and that's fact.
And the thing that I also want to touch on is
Chris, let's make this you get the final word. So no, you're good. You get the final word, but go ahead and make your point.
We also need to understand that there are Trump supporters who are not currently happy with the current administration. That there are people who voted for Trump, many of them low propensity voters, young voters, minority voters, who are looking at the state of this country right now and being like, things aren't great right now. Things are awful right now. The vibes are at an all-time low, in fact. So when you look at the state of the country, how are you supposed to expect young voters who for the first time in their life decided to vote for Donald Trump, and then they turn around and the guy's saying, hey, I don't want you to afford a house because someone who's 67 years old needs to have an $800,000 house. That's ridiculous. So you have to look at yourself in the mirror and try and understand why people are feeling the way they are right now and actually do something to fix it, because right now things are awful.
Well, here's why we're honked off. Let's move to our next topic, because you've got opportunities in Illinois. As we have watched the Democrats go super far left in this state, it's created opportunities that Republicans haven't necessarily taken advantage of, but I know we'll talk about Dillan's race in a little bit. Some of the things Eric Sorensen has done since being in office and while running for office creates an opportunity. Let's talk about the Gov race. We have Morning Consult did their polling for their job approval for governors. And I don't know how they test this, because these numbers are way higher than any poll I've seen for any of these individuals, or at least most of them. So I'm not sure exactly how they're doing this testing, but they've got J.B. Pritzker at plus 16. Most polls that I've seen have him at single digits, and low single digits at that. But that's not my point here. My point is to compare him to all the other governors in this country. And if you look at the list, Pritzker is 36th. I got to explain to you how crazy that is. J.B. Pritzker, who hasn't really been challenged by Republican opposition, by associations and organizations, by most members of the media, that, Patrick, I said most, I added the qualifier, but you've got somebody who's barely been challenged, barely been attacked, and he's the 36th most popular governor in the entire country. There are opportunities here when you look at the right direction, wrong, wrong track numbers for Illinois. They've been underwater ever since J.B. Pritzker's been in office. And why? Well, he just did a podcast. I don't know if you guys watched this. I took the time to watch it because honestly, it was making me laugh the whole time. But he was on the Death of Centrism podcast. See, Pritzker's not even pretending anymore to be a moderate, to be mainstream, to be a governing leader. He went on this I've Had It podcast, which, by the way, is like the perfect picture of today's Democrat Party. It's two angry liberal white women, basically Karens. Like, watch the episode Pritzker was on. The whole first 15, 16 minutes, they were whining about tech support and how, they were being forced to do tech support online and they wanted to call someone. And then the other lady was talking about how somebody's dog assaulted her at a dog park and stole the hood of her coat, and how it was a criminal black lab that stole her hood. I mean, listen, this is literally the base of today's Democratic Party. And on that, in their intro, patriots, gay triots, they triots, black triots, brown triots. That's how they introduce their podcast. So you know who you're talking to there. And one of them said they love Brandon Johnson as one of their favorite politicians. Again, so you know what podcast he's on here. And the whole time he's talking about how, like, we need to stop pussyfooting around, no more incremental. We need to go for everything, have our own project 2025, comparing again Republicans to Nazis in Germany in the 1930s, said he supports Zoran Mamdani, again, another Nazi comparison later on. Like, this is, and again, he talked about he didn't want incremental progress. Another word for incremental progress is governing, but that's not what Pritzker's interested in. This is who J.B. Pritzker is today. Maybe he wasn't 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't speak to that, but I can tell you who Pritzker is today is the same Pritzker who went to Nevada speaking to Democrats and yet again invoked Nazis, because that's just what he does. Like, this is our opponent in this gubernatorial race. It's why we Republicans are so frustrated, because the left, Democrats, are so vulnerable. If we could just get our act together, we could actually make a move on this governor's race. I'm sure our panel is going to talk about how we're probably not, because our candidates aren't doing super great in this race, but Pritzker is vulnerable, and that's why we're also frustrated that we're not doing more. So if you have thoughts on that, go for it. But otherwise, it's just a open topic to talk about the Gov's race. I know what Bailey's doing, another bus tour. Dabrowski's rolled out more endorsements from elected officials and Republican leaders. Heidner's been putting out a bunch of videos. I can't wait for Patrick to talk about his Twitter or his X spat with the Heidner campaign. That was fun to watch. They're pushing out issues. I know Bailey's talking today about proof of citizenship to vote. They've jumped on to Regan Deering's bill about tax on tips. So you see some of these candidates putting their name out there, doing more videos, doing more stuff. We also saw some negatives, which I'm sure you guys are going to bring up. So there's some activity, but so far we haven't seen anybody yet step up and show, hey, I can beat J.B. Pritzker. So thoughts on the Gov race?
So I have one response to everything you just said, Colin. Who cares? Who cares? Like, everything J.B. Pritzker has done, the average voter isn't paying attention. The average voter isn't watching J.B. Pritzker on some podcast. The average voter has no idea what any of these gubernatorial candidates are doing. To the extent to which that the average voter knows that there's a Republican primary for governor, it's whether or not they have seen Rick Heidner's TV ads or maybe seen his digital ads. That is the extent the average voter is paying attention to the Republican primary race for governor. There is nothing going on. There is no energy. In 2022, there was energy. You had this energy from the Darren Bailey campaign. We're going to reopen our schools. Remember that? We're going to reopen our schools. We're going to
Bailey impression is awful.
Doesn't matter. We have all this energy on this hand, and you got all this money on this other hand with Richard Irvin and Jesse Sullivan and these people. So that you got stuff going on, TV ads, grassroots support. There's nothing going on. Ted Dabrowski can roll out an endorsement from every Republican elected official in the state. No one will see it. Nobody will care because nothing is happening. So at the end of the day, the March 17th is going to come around. Someone's going to win the Republican Party primary, probably Darren Bailey. Who knows? Maybe because Darren Bailey's done absolutely nothing, Rick Heidner pulls it off. Probably not, but who knows? Things can happen. And it doesn't matter because nobody's paying attention to what J.B. Pritzker said on a podcast. None of the Republicans have any money. And even if Heidner did, I don't know if his out-of-state consultants would tell him to say these things. So who cares? That is my lesson from today's podcast.
Chris has reached the official giving up stage of the 26 stages of Illinois politics grief. Patrick, I know you on Twitter. I saw you and Heidner's campaign going back and forth about relatability with voters.
Well, let me first respond to Chris in the sense that he's actually right in this regard that no normal voter gives a damn about the insider ball game stuff that we talk about. They care about going to the grocery store and seeing prices through the roof. They care about everything that they order on Amazon being more expensive. They care about property taxes being through the roof. They care about, the fact that the gas tax is making, gas in this state much higher than all the states around us, and the fact that it's just so damn expensive to live here. That's the issue. That's the only issue, and Republicans still aren't talking about it. Republicans still aren't talking about it. And Democrats are going to steal this issue from Republicans, and it's going to be J.B. Pritzker making cost of living about Trump instead of Republicans making cost of living about J.B. Pritzker. And that is a fundamental failure in this election, and probably why none of these Republican candidates for governor are ever going to get any traction, because none of them seem to be able to do the fundamentals. It's like a basketball team that can't dribble a ball. It's absolutely asinine. And the Heidner thing is just silly amateur stuff, right? Colin, you and I mean, we've both done campaigns that you don't go and publicize your fundraisers, right? You don't post photos of them. You don't try to look out of touch to your constituents or the people you're trying to convince to vote. Not only did Heidner post photos, they did a glitzy video that looked like a bad send up of Robin Leach's Life of the Rich and Famous, or Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, with people doing the clinkies of their champagne glasses. So I just made a comment that, oh, totally relatable, and they send me a drone shot of the apartment complex that he grew up in Lombard or something, that like he believes in hard work or whatever some lame ass consultant wrote in it. And and I was just talking about relatability, right? You don't relate to normal conservative populist middle income voters by hey, here's video of our high dollar fundraiser in the suburbs. So of course I clapped back because I'm a smart ass and had a screenshot of his estate in South Barrington with the lion heads on the gates outside of his estate, because he's totally relatable, right? I mean, the thing is, like, Pritzker, for all of his many faults, right? He doesn't usually talk about being uber rich. We do that. We talk about that for him. Other than the one example of the DNC last year, which was really bad and really awkward. He doesn't dress over the top. He doesn't act over the top most of the time in public. If you didn't know that he was a billionaire, you probably wouldn't tell just by looking at him or talking to him. And I think that Heidner's just coming across as completely out of touch. But I mean, there's nothing
Patrick,
authentic about Donald Trump.
I think it's
who knows?
Well, I think that's, Patrick, that was exactly what I was going to say. Is their constituency right now? It's kind of like the Bailey Bost campaign from 2 years ago. It's like this is at the moment, at least for Heidner, it's a constituency of one. Get the Trump endorsement, and that's how we're going to win this primary. Because everything about that campaign is so Trump, from the gold, everything to the event and the videos they're putting out. Like, it's very much trying to be Trump, and this is our,
including his gaudy ass lapel pin. Can we say that it's like a diamond studded American flag lapel pin? What is that?
Well, what's interesting, Patrick, is when I was shoveling the driveway for like the 8th time in the last 2 weeks, I thought about it, and I was like, which of these candidates for governor had actually shoveled the driveway in the last, I don't know, 10 years? Like, Pritzker hasn't. He is a person who hired a person who hired a person who hired somebody to deal with the driveway. You got Heidner, who, in that estate, sure, he's got people who shovel it. Maybe he did when he was younger, but it's been a while. You got, I mean, even Dabrowski lives in a real nice $1 million plus home. He probably has somebody who shovels it. You got Mendrick, who's more working class, but I mean, being the sheriff, they've got all sorts of relationships with tow companies. I'm sure he's got a buddy who shovels it. And Bailey is, I mean, they've got, people don't realize how gigantic that farm is. It is massive. It's a massive corporate farm. He's a millionaire. He does not shovel his own driveway. Like
Well, last time I talked to Bailey, he actually told me one of his kids was coming by with a tractor to plow the driveway.
Well, there you go.
That day.
Well,
So, yeah, no one's
but you think
no
about
one's
like
going
all
out
these
there with a
candidates
shovel.
keep telling us they understand our pain. I feel your pain. It's like it, but you don't. Even on the Republican side, like how many of you actually go through the things that we working families actually go to? Dylan, I don't want to make you talk about the gov race because obviously you've got your own race. But one of the reasons why I liked it when you announced is it was like, okay, this is just he's a normal dude, and like you still got to win a primary, you got to earn people's support. But like I will give you credit. I like the fact that you're a normal guy running for Congress because my biggest frustration in politics right now are all these people who are significantly more wealthy than the average American, the average Illinoisan, who are like, oh, pat us on the head. I feel your pain. I know what you're going through. It's like, no, you don't. You have no clue.
And I agree with that, Colin, and I appreciate it. I'm just a normal guy. I deal with the same problems with my electricity bills and all of my 7 coffee shops doubled. And granted, we're doing well with for ourselves. We've built a coffee business from 1 location to 7 in the last 5 years, but I can promise you on my front door cam that I was out there shoveling snow until my 9-year-old wanted to make a buck. Uh, but this race is going to come down to on the governor's side, and really the whole scene nationwide. It's affordability. People want to be able to relate. I've got young employees, all of mine 65 or more now. They want to move out of mom and dad's house, and they can't do it. So we've got to reel things in. We've got to have a better message. I agree with you guys. I'm not as such doom and gloom as some of you may be. I still have hope on the horizon since I do own businesses here, but we've got a real things in here as a Republican Party.
Yeah, well, and I think some of the other stuff from the race. Sometimes, I know, Michael, you were intrigued by this. So sometimes went after Heidner. I mean, you knew somebody was going to. It's probably the first of what I'm sure will be many stories that are out there about some of Heidner's business ties. I know the Tribune went after all the candidates on crime and immigration in a pretty lengthy post, which I have nudged the Trib a little bit because they have been extra rough to the Republican field. But reading that story, I kind of don't blame the Trib for being rough to him because every single one handled the crime issue wrong. They had opportunities to say because the crime numbers are down. Numbers are numbers. The numbers are down. The Republican approach needs to be, yes, the numbers are down, but do you feel safer? That's the response, not, oh, no, they're not. It's a lie. The numbers are. No, they are. They actually are. And all you do is make people like the Trib and WGN and all of them go, okay, well, now you're just a liar, and now we're just going to rip on you because you literally said these numbers that we're looking at are fake. So, and then they got to immigration and they all defended what happened in Minnesota in their own way. It's like, okay, well, yes. Well, I want to say the Trib has been a bit rough on the Republican field. Every time I see them run a story and Republicans are quoted, I'm like, well, okay, I guess you kind of deserve it. So there was that. I know, Michael, you also posted a video that Ted did about Bailey attacking him for losing so quickly in 2022, which could have been a solid hit, but I think we all agreed in our Discord it was fairly poorly done, unfortunately. So there's some frustrations for sure in this field.
I mean, I think, yeah, the attack of he lost last time. I mean, I just don't know that that really resonates with people. I mean, people are
It
kind of,
should, but it
it
doesn't.
should. It doesn't. I mean, it's not effective, right? So it doesn't make sense
And
to
Michael, I
me.
think what really like they end the video with there's one candidate who can beat JB Pritzker, and then they show their logo. And it sort of dawned on me after the last several months of hearing Ted say, "I'm the one candidate who can beat Pritzker." I'm like, how many audiences are saying, "Okay, now tell us how"? Because like you can say you're the candidate who can beat Pritzker, you can say I'm the candidate who can beat so and so, but I think the person's expecting a follow up. Okay, tell me how. How are you the person who can beat Pritzker? Because I want to beat Pritzker. So saying you're the one candidate who can do it, okay, you got my attention, but like give me something that proves what you're saying is true. And they're sort of missing the meat to that.
But yeah, I think that's the whole point, right? You start with, Darren Bailey lost last time, and then you pivot to, you should vote for me because of these reasons, and this is why I'm going to do better. in a head-to-head matchup with the guy, and nobody's really saying that. They're just
See,
saying he lost. Okay, well, yeah, he did.
See, at least Irvin, when he was running and he was running with the I can actually beat Pritzker, was like, oh, I'm a moderate. I got Ken Griffin's money. That's why I'm going to beat Pritzker. With Dabrowski, it's like, you're just as conservative as Bailey is, dude. Like, what makes you a better candidate for governor? Oh, you raised $1 million? Congratulations. That gets your foot in the door, buddy. That doesn't mean you can beat JB Pritzker. Where's the next 49 million? Come on, chop chop, buddy. Hinder, frankly, is a better argument to why he could beat JB Pritzker than Dabrowski does.
Last thing on the Gov race, I meant to say this last week when we talked about the poll that the Bailey campaign released. There was something I meant to say that I had in my notes that I realized as we finished the episode and I was looking through my notes. I was like, crap, I forgot to say that. Something really interesting in the methodology of that report, if you look at it, they said a couple things. They said in the Republican oversample, and you also look at the sample size that they had. If you're a pollster, those two things stand out to you as interesting because they mean one of two things. Either they took the full poll and narrowed the results. Maybe they polled only Republicans and then narrowed it to likely voting Republicans. That's option one, which I don't think is what they did, but it is, based on the way they worded it, an option. But based on that, the addition of the word oversample, that to me says they polled the general election. They polled general election voters in Illinois and then pulled out the Republican responses. They oversampled those responses, so got an extra, I don't know, 100 Republican responses to add to it so that they could have a lower margin of error in the Republican only data. Why do I explain all of that? I know it's really in the weeds. Here's why I explain that. If the latter is the case, which I believe that it is, then the Bailey team, which this was smart, they should have done this, they polled general election voters to see where their candidate stands in the general election. If I'm one of the other candidates, I'm saying, hey, release the numbers. Because when there have been polling that's been done by Emerson and by some other entities that poll Bailey v. Pritzker one-on-one, those numbers have not been great. Emerson had Bailey losing by 20. And so if the Bailey campaign did indeed do a poll of Bailey head-to-head with Pritzker and they didn't release it, that indicates that number probably wasn't very good. So I'm really curious, what was that number? Because we only have Emerson publicly. That's the only data we have that says Bailey's down by 20. If I'm the Bailey campaign, I'm going to want to refute that. If I'm the other campaigns, I'm going to want to put a spotlight on that. If I'm Dabrowski with this video, I'm shining a spotlight on that poll. It's a proof that Bailey can't win. If I'm the Bailey camp, I'd want to disprove that notion. So all of this, again, it's really in the weeds, but that word oversampling there is actually key. And I'm maybe not surprised that the other campaigns weren't smart enough to pick up on it, but they really should be asking questions about, well, okay, what else did you not release that was in this data? Just a thought. All right. Now, as promised, we're done with our political topics, except for one. We're going to hear from Dillan Vancil. He's running for the 17th Congressional District. We're going to hear why he believes he's the best candidate. As a reminder, if you just clicked over to this and missed the intro to this episode, we are inviting all Republican candidates in challenged races that are within a certain margin of actually being in play, serious candidates. So we have invited Dillan's opponent, haven't heard back, but we do have an open invitation to her to join us. So we are not picking sides, but we would like, since we have a statewide audience, we would like to allow these candidates to introduce themselves to people all throughout the state. Because if we're going to pick up seats, if we're going to do well in November, they're going to need help even outside their district. The 17th Congressional District is, if Republicans are going to be able to make a play for a district, 17 is the one that's the most likely. There's a few reasons for that. The overall numbers are more solid. Sorensen has moved pretty far left for that district. It's working class. It's not super suburban. You look at some of the numbers from before in 2022, we only lost it by 4. Trump only lost it by 4 in 2024. Bailey in 22 only lost it by 3. So you're kind of looking for those districts, since Bailey's likely to be the nominee, you're looking for those districts where Trump doesn't kill you, where Bailey doesn't kill you, and 17 is actually one of those districts. So Dillan is one of the two candidates for that race. Tell us how you're going to win it. Tell us why people statewide should be paying attention to you.
Yeah. So, well, first, I appreciate you guys having me on. And it's crazy to think that it was about a year ago, I wandered down to Bloomington to an event that you were hosting there. Time flies by when you're having fun. And
Jeez, that was a year ago. Crazy.
I know it. Here we are, 60,000 plus miles later. We've wandered our way around this insanely gerrymandered district. Myself, I've got two rambunctious boys that are 9 and 7. my wonderful wife has put up with me for almost 20 years now. Small business owner. Before that though, I was a railroad engineer. I spent some time, a year out in Montana. I spent 5 years in South Dakota. And I bring that up because while I was out in South Dakota as a railroad engineer, I was actually the state legislative director for the union out there, for the railroad union. And for those who don't know, when you go to BNSF or Canadian Pacific, UP, any of those, you have to join the union. You don't have a choice. So I spent 10 years there. Again, 5 years in South Dakota as the legislative director. Moved back home, had kiddos, and ended up working for Canadian Pacific out of the Quad Cities. Was tired of being gone and on call 6 days a week, so we started a mobile coffee trailer right there in Monmouth, Illinois. Now it's been 5 years later. We have 7 locations. We have just become a franchise as of last year. Looking to add 4 more locations on top of all this political craziness this year. Employ 60 plus young adults, all from 17 to 25. That's allowed me the time to, I jumped on my school board in 21 in the midst of COVID and all that chaos. Been on the chamber board, Eagle View Community Health Board. Just fully, dove into my communities, and now we're taking that to the next level. And I agree with you guys. I think this whole race here at the 17th is going to come down to affordability. Like I said, just one of our locations, our electricity bill went from $1,400 a month to $2,900 a month. I don't know where the messaging is on this. I've been preaching this as for the last 8 months that this has been going on. Um, it's crazy. We've got to get stuff reeled in, and my employees, a lot of them now are getting to that age where they're getting kicked off of health insurance or mom and dads, so they're looking for their options. I've got to or I have to offer health insurance because I employ over fifty people now. Well, even after I pay the mandated 25% of their premium, it's still around $750 a month. When you guys were 24, 25, could you afford 750 bucks a month? I know sure as hell I couldn't. So we've got to get some of this stuff under control. Now, I agree. Sorensen is extremely vulnerable. He is more worried about the age of consent than he is lowering our taxes. Um, I was a little disappointed on how things went this last cycle. I like Joe McGraw, great guy, and I think he would have done a great job. But I'm bringing a whole different work ethic to this district. I am somewhere every day. This is my full-time job. And that's what it's going to take to if we have any shot of beating Sorensen this year.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about working class districts. As you mentioned, it's incredibly gerrymandered. Our producer will put the map up on post so people can see what we're talking about if they don't know the 17th as intimately as you do. But you've got a lot of working class areas. And frankly, those are the few areas in Illinois we've seen success in the last 2, 4, 6 years, whether it's Will County, the Metro or the Metro East area, a little bit in Sangamon County, and out by you towards Rockford. These are regions where again, they're union households, they're working class households, and they don't really align with today's Democratic Party, which has become sort of just the North Shore far left liberal party. So it's an opportunity for a working class person, someone who started from nothing, who built themselves up, someone who is worked at a union, who's not anti-union while also being Republican. I think there's things that you can certainly promote that in a general election could be helpful for the party. So it's good to see. Like you, we were all very disappointed in the outcome of the McGraw race, and certainly the race itself. So we're hopeful this time around that you're going to show us something better.
That's what we're shooting for. Like I said, 60 plus thousand miles in at this point, and we're going to continue to be somewhere every day and meet as many people as we can. People are ready for a change, and Eric Sorensen's just a chip off the block of JB Pritzker. I mean, they align with everything. With Eric voting for, I believe it was HB 28, and this is a huge topic. It's a 90-10 issue. I mean, he voted to keep boys out of girls' sports. And that's an issue we're going to continue to discuss and talk about with our voters here in the 17th. They're fed up with the social politician. Let's get down to work and fix these guys, help the people's checkbooks.
All right. Well, we talked about sort of trend lines in a lot of districts. We just talked about this at an event earlier this week. This is one of the few districts that's actually trending towards Republicans. The question will be is how does it play in 2026? But it was D5, D6 about a decade ago. It hasn't trended a ton towards Republicans, but it's more D3 to D4. It's only a point or two. But again, the underlying numbers in that district, how people are voting up and down the ballot, not just at the very top. You're seeing a slight trend towards Republican. Again, yeah, it's slight, but we've got a lot of districts that are showing a massive trend towards Democrats here in the suburbs. So the fact that it's a district that isn't trending against us gives us hope. Dylan, where can people go to learn more about you?
Yeah, jump onto my Facebook page there, Dillan Vancil for Congress. Follow us on there. Invite your like-minded conservative friends to follow us on there. If you would like to sign up to volunteer, request a yard sign, just throw a contribution our way. As you guys have stated several times on multiple shows, the raising money part for a lot of candidates statewide is a hot issue. Unfortunately, nobody's found that money tree laying around here in Illinois, but go to vansilforcongress.com. Help us out any way you can. And I appreciate you guys having me on.
Cool. Well, let's get into policy now. We're going to talk a couple issues that are hot both federally and at the state level, but certainly in the news. I'll be honest, I didn't really have school choice on my radar for being one of our topics just because I figured this was going to be the same thing it always is. And it was for a little bit. The right a couple weeks ago, a bunch of conservative organizations and lawmakers put something out, said why, Pritzker should sign on to the federal school voucher program that passed as part of the big beautiful bill or the Working Families Tax Cut Act, which everyone knows is never ever ever going to happen. And then the left put out their thing from a number of their organizations that was super hyperbolic, but of course predictably saying how this would be the end of all public education and would result in the death of every teacher on the planet. I'm being a little dramatic, but actually not much. It's pretty close to what they were saying. So I don't know. I figured maybe we'd talk about it, maybe we wouldn't. But here's something I've seen just in the last week or two that actually made me raise an eyebrow. And part of why we do this podcast is to help equip the right. And I've seen something that is actually really good that I want to point out. That I think more people should be doing. So there was a Tribune story about this that quoted kind of both sides, and you saw a little bit of this messaging in that story. But then I saw it from you maybe give me your shocked face, but from Austin Berg at IPI, I saw it in an op-ed that was put into. I think this was the Chicago Tribune from Froylan Jimenez, who's a CPS teacher. I'm guessing that some groups obviously helped her put it in, probably related to IPI, but who knows? And there's been some messaging in here that I've not heard used before that actually is really solid, which is pointing out that the Democratic governor of Colorado said I'd be crazy not to do this. That's decently helpful. But here's the big thing. Opting in, I'm quoting from Austin Berg on Twitter or X, opting in will unlock hundreds of millions of dollars for Illinois schools, including public schools. I think that's a thing we haven't heard before. When people talk about school choice, it's sort of the kind of the tweet I mentioned before from Dabrowski. Illinois schools are failing. We got to let kids leave those schools and go to better schools. And that creates this us versus them mentality, which is what this debate always ends up being. It's us versus them, which leaves people like me in a really tough spot because I am pro public schools, but I also believe we could do more to support students and have that money follow the kids and put more money into all of our schools so that kids get a better education in the state. You can believe both things, but the problem is by making it this us versus them, there's no room for people like me who would like to do both. So the fact that they've moved this messaging towards, hey, listen, because it's true, these vouchers would let kids move from one public school to another, but they also would be able to be used for other things for their education. That's what they're kind of keying in here, is that those vouchers would allow for spending on after school programs, on when there's fees from the schools that need to be paid, it would go towards their education. They could be spent on anything related to their education, which means if you're a public school, you could say, hey, listen, kids can stay here, and then we could go get that money. I mean, literally, if you're the public school, you could say this is money coming into our public schools. It's not an angle that pro school choice people have taken in the past, but frankly, I think it's a really strong angle and a strong message that they should do more often. And especially, I see it especially in that op-ed. Go check it out. Again, I think it's the Trib, Froylan Jimenez, who put it in. And I love how she talks about that education funding is not a zero-sum situation where we're pitting private schools and charter schools against public schools. We want to help those with low incomes have better opportunities, better outcomes. It creates spending flexibility for parents to help with, here we go, tuition, school supplies, technology needs, summer programs, after school programs, tutoring, college prep, transportation. I mean, a lot of those are things that are done now through the public school system. It does not have to be an us versus them situation. And I have not seen this done before. And I really want to point it out, give it a big thumbs up, and encourage conservatives, encourage Republicans to use this approach because it's going to be much more effective when you're talking to the average voter on the street. So, open forum for the federal voucher program. Obviously, it's extremely unlikely that J.B. Pritzker would ever go into it because the teachers' unions are all against it. But open topic for you all to jump in on if you'd like.
Well, I think it's just disappointing because, we had Invest in Kids. That was a successful program that got killed. Now there's this federal option. And because it was the Trump administration's idea, we can't sign up for that either. So it's like, we got to do something to help these kids have a high quality education because, it's cliche, but they are the next generation and we're not doing them any favors.
Yeah, I think
you look
when
at
you
the
test
stats,
things
they're
like
not good.
a kid's education should not be determined by the zip code they happen to live in. I mean, there's a lot of people agree with that. It's just how we do it that matters. But I think these people are making a really solid point, which is this money, this is federal money, number one. And number two, it's going to go somewhere. So you're going to let every other state get this benefit, but because you hate Trump and don't want to allow a foothold for school choice into the state, we're just going to say, yeah, we don't want that money. There needs to be a middle ground here where you say, listen, we're not going to be anti-public schools, but why the heck would we say no to more money in the educational system in the state? That's where I struggle to connect those dots here.
Well, if you remember the Invest in Kids battle, it wasn't Pritzker that ended up killing the program, right? He just didn't lift a finger to save it in the end. So I think that could give you the sense potentially that maybe he's not completely opposed. Maybe he won't turn down money from the government. But as with everything that J.B. Pritzker does and says, you have to look at it through the lens of 2028. Mm-hmm. And is there any Democratic candidate for president that would buck teachers' unions in that way? And he won't do it. So, I think I'm sure it's IPI that's behind all this stuff, and good for them. I'm for them. I'm for school choice, but it's an issue I've worked on in the past. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I'm an advocate.
Well, and I think what you just mentioned, I would second that feeling about Pritzker. On this, we're going to talk pensions in a second. I still believe to this day that Pritzker's default is more pragmatic and actually even more moderate. And that was the hope we all had for Pritzker as somebody who couldn't be bought, as somebody who brought his own wealth to the table, that he had the potential to be one of our best governors in the history of Illinois. But because he's been chasing this presidential dream, this national ambition, he can't be him. And I think this is one of those issues where if he wasn't chasing that national ambition, he would probably sit down and be an adult in the room and say, why wouldn't we take free money? We're not going to have school choice in Illinois, but why wouldn't we take free money that could go to public schools? And yes, also some private schools, but why would we say no to that? But as you said, Patrick, because of his national ambitions, there is a 0% chance it's going to happen.
Well, go ahead, Dylan.
No, I was just going to say, I think at this point, he's just risk averse to, like you said, pissing anybody off. And how will these people think? What will this group think of it, and how will they vote in 2028 if I do this thing?
One of the side effects of all of this lack of funding for school choice or even non-public education is the continual decline of Catholic education in the state. The Archdiocese of Chicago came out with 6 schools that have closed in the Archdiocese. One of which is the oldest Polish parish in the country, St. Stan's in Wicker Park. One of them is my mother and my uncle's school in St. Bruno's in Archer Heights. And it's very upsetting. And this is something I told candidates in the city of Chicago in 2024. Let's invest in kids. Is that you have so many parents who want to send their kids to Catholic school. And I understand. The Catholic Church has problems with their education system. There's other reasons for the decline. But one of the problems is it's like when you're given the option between free public education or maybe a more quality Catholic education you're going to have to pay for, more often they're going to pick the free public education, even if it's of lesser quality. So I think if we actually look at the options here, and we can find a way to supplant Catholic education in the state of Illinois and also help public schools who don't have to have that large burden on them with more students who are coming from closed Catholic schools, I think this could be a good thing for everybody. But of course, the Democrats don't really have an appetite for saving Catholic education anymore. When at one point the Democratic Party was extremely pro-parochial education, and the Republican Party was pro-public education. It's a weird dynamic in the way the politics has changed nowadays. But I wish that there was a way we could save Catholic education in the state, because right now it's not looking very good.
Hmm. Well, something that I like, we talking about messaging here. Condi Rice, the Reagan Library, re-put this out a few days ago. She said this back in 2024, but I love the way, and those who know me know that I have a man crush on Condi Rice, mostly her brain, but she's also gorgeous. But my wife chuckles because I love the way she puts things, and this was a really good way she put this. She said this, and once she said it, I was like, yeah, it's right. I've been repeating this since she said this back in 2024. We already have a choice system in education. If you're of means, you will move to a district where the schools are good and the houses are expensive. If you're really wealthy, you'll send your kids to private schools. So who's stuck in failing neighborhood schools? Poor kids, and a lot of them minority kids. So how can you say you're for civil rights? How can you say you're for the poor when you're condemning those children to not be able to read by the time they're in third grade? They're never going to read. Now, the latter part of that, I think, goes into that negative framing that I don't tend to really appreciate, because I don't think that resonates super well with voters. But the first part, I think, is incredibly true. You see it with Stacey Davis Gates and the hypocrisy coming out of her, where it's like, I think Republicans need to use this message. We do already have a school choice system. You currently can choose where to send your kids to school. You can choose it by moving to a more expensive neighborhood, buying a more expensive house, which means the only people who have school choice currently are the ones who can afford to either do that or send their kids to a private school. That's where there's no equity. That's where there's no fairness. That lower income families don't have the same opportunity that upper income families do. And that's a problem. If you stand for fairness and equity, you can't be for that.
And as a school board member, I want to chime in here. It's in traveling throughout the district in Peoria and Rockford, Bloomington, these people overwhelmingly want school choice. Here in rural parts of Illinois, I mean, there's counties that only have one, maybe two school districts in the entire county, and our schools are so underfunded here in Illinois. It's insanity. But we've got to get some money to these rural school districts. During COVID, we're fortunate enough to where we're 30 miles away from Iowa, where we were able to send our boys during the mask mandates. We got them out of Illinois so they wouldn't have to wear masks their first years of school, and send them over to a private school over in Iowa. But unfortunately, like you guys said, it comes down to, can you afford to move, and can you afford the private schools? And unfortunately, majority of people can't afford to do that, and we're stuck here with what we've got, and there's just not many options around.
Well, especially with our over reliance on property taxes, you've got more wealthy neighborhoods can afford to invest in their schools, but you've got more rural areas that really struggle. And again, that just does not get talked about often enough. By the way, you can tell when somebody's actually from rural Illinois because they don't ever say the second R. So, Dylan, congratulations to you. You clearly are actually from rural Illinois.
Cross that off there.
Yeah, I chuckle about that. Pfingsten, it looks like you had a thought. Go ahead, and we can close this.
Well, first of all, I won't apologize for my non-regional diction. Thank you very much. I'm from rural Illinois, and I do say the second R. No, I just think it's worth mentioning to back up the point of those with means send their kids where they want to. And Speaker of the House, who helped kill Invest in Kids, sends his kids to Timothy Christian, and J.B. Pritzker sent his kids to private school, and Stacey Davis Gates sends at least one of her kids to private school. It's just a level of hypocrisy that's really frustrating in this whole debate. And if they really cared that much about public schools, then the speaker's kids would be in school in Hillside. Then the governor's kids would have gone to the charter school CPS that has his own name on it, or Bruce Rauner's name on it. And it's just it's frustrating that these guys get away with the double talk on public education when they send their own kids to private school.
That's a good place to end this topic. Let's move over to pensions. I'm going to do something. First of all, I'm going to explain something, but then I'm going to do something. So here's your hook. Stick around for this topic because I'm going to say something that you almost never hear out of my mouth. So before I do that, let me explain why pensions is a big deal for anybody who maybe hasn't fully followed this situation. The reason why pensions are being talked about, it's three things, it's not just one. The one that everybody knows about, if you're watching this, you follow politics, you understand there's a safe harbor issue, something needs to be done about it. We can't get any studies done because the reality is the safe harbor issue actually really only exists for those upper income people accepting pensions on tier two. And nobody wants that vote to be tied to helping those six-figure pension earners. They want us to still think it's for the little guys. That's why they're doing it. So we don't know what the problem is, but there is a safe harbor issue problem. We don't know the numbers. We'll never know the numbers because they don't want us to know. But that's reason one why pensions are a big issue. Reason number two why pensions are coming up is ever since tier two was passed, the unions have been wanting to go and change it, make it more like tier one, or maybe make it entirely like tier one. They've been wanting to bring things back to where they were. They're unhappy with I'll just say lower pensions, and I'm generalizing, but lower generally pensions that are being provided by tier two. So there's money in the account right now because you've been seeing these revenue reports come in that the state, as of this last one from COGFA, it looks like the state's revenues are up more than $1 billion from what they were a year ago, and up significantly from what was expected. And so people, of course, down in Springfield are looking at that going, ooh, I can have money for my projects. So this is the number two reason. The number three reason that hasn't been talked about often enough, but I know Batnick and some others were pointing this out several years ago, and they've been trying to get people to pay attention to this, that in 2030 and in 2033, bonds are falling off. One of them is pension related, one is related to paying off old debts and old bills, but those are falling off in 30 and 33. And so you're going to have free money, new money available to be spent. And so everybody wants to be able to say where that money goes. Conservatives, Republicans for a couple of years have been saying they want to take a portion of that, or maybe even all of that, and have it go towards lowering property taxes. J.B. Pritzker just came out this week and said, you know what, we're going to take that, at least a majority of it, and we're going to put it into paying down the current pension debts. That's the responsible choice. And then, of course, the unions are going and saying, let's take that and let's increase their pensions. More money. Hey, let's take that money. So that's why pensions right now in 2026 are a huge deal, because you have all three of those things colliding. And this is going to be a big fight, a big issue in the 2026 session. So here's the part that I was going to say that I never say. I'm going to give J.B. Pritzker some credit here, that he's standing up to people that frankly have been his base in this state. When they were unhappy that he came out with a plan to fully fund pensions, a plan to invest state funds, current state funds, into paying down those pensions, not increasing the pensions even further beyond what needs to be done to fix safe harbor, not raising taxes even more to do this. Of course, he wants to raise taxes elsewhere, but at least not here. I will admit this is a responsible plan. I would tweak a couple things, but it's a fiscally responsible plan that we rarely see out of Pritzker, and I will give him credit for that, especially because the people who came after it, the unions all came after him and said, no, 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 this ain't happening. You got to go with our plan that raises tier two and increases pension benefits. And Pritzker came back again, giving him credit here. Pritzker came back because that coalition, One Illinois Coalition, their claim is always that we're in a recruitment and retention crisis. And I ask people who represent pensions and represent unions that question all the time, because I keep hearing that we're in this crisis, and I keep saying, but Pritzker's office keeps touting, and the unions keep touting, that we have record state employment. So which one is it? Do we have a crisis with recruiting and retaining talent, or do we have record state employees and employees in these pension systems? It can't be both things. It's one or the other. And Pritzker came out and said exactly the same thing, said that actually no, claims that the state of Illinois is unable to recruit employees due to tier two pensions are not supported by the data. Again, I am shocked that I see J.B. Pritzker pushing back against the unions and being fiscally conservative and fiscally responsible, but it deserves to be applauded when it happens. And so J.B. Pritzker, I will applaud this. It's deserved. With that, another sort of Christmas tree issue here. Take it any direction you want on pensions. Go for it.
Well, I think the governor does deserve credit for wanting to address the spike in the ramp, because near the end of the ramp, the state's pension payment under current construction is something like $30 billion a year. or in a single year at one point toward the end of the ramp. So to extend that out even by 3 years, as it was explained to me, to make it 100% and instead of 90%, spreads out some of that pain under the current situation. The tier two issue is what throws a monkey wrench into all of this. And while you want to lump all of the unions together on this, I don't think you can. Because this We Are One coalition, I think, is having an internal fight. They won't admit it, but I think like the AFL-CIO types are trying to be pretty responsible in the, let's fix the safe harbor problem. Let's not give free gifts to the U of I medicine doctor who, retired with a pension and at a salary level of $555,000 a year or something. But then inside that coalition, I think you've got the teachers unions, which are being really loud and really saber rattling here, wanting everything and a pony to get pensions, the tier two pensions, eliminated and bumped back up to tier one, if not even more. So that's the fight the unions are having internally, which I think is going to end up making a deal in the end harder to get to, because they're going to have a hard time finding consensus, because the grown-ups in the room may just get shouted down by the teachers union saying we want everything.
Well, it is interesting to see that coalition, and I can see the wisdom in what you're saying. I'm not on the inside and any of this, so thank you for that information, because I've been looking at this coalition and seeing, there are members of that coalition that tend to be a bit more reasonable as unions go in this state, and then there are members of the coalition who tend to be not very reasonable at all. And so it is a very interesting coalition. And when I saw the stuff they were putting out that was pretty far left, I was like, some of these unions, I'm shocked they said yes to this statement being put out. So maybe you're right. It does sound logical that you're right. We're going to probably see it all play out in real time in the coming months.
I really appreciate Patrick bringing up the split in organized labor, because I've been talking
We
about
can't hear
this.
you, Chris. Come closer to your mic.
I really appreciate Patrick talking about the split in organized labor, because it's something I've been talking about for years, and something not a lot of Republicans understand, where you have a lot of unions who are willing to sit down at the table and negotiate, and then you have a lot of the service-oriented unions, healthcare unions, and teachers unions who are more the loud voices at the table Patrick mentioned. So I really appreciate that. In relation to Governor Pritzker, it's very interesting. And I got to say, who else to get it done? I think if there's anybody in this state who can sit the unions down and tell them, listen, state's dead broke. We got to put some of this money towards the pension in 30 years, or there's not going to be a state of Illinois. If there's anybody who could do that, it's J.B. Pritzker. And for that, I agree with you, Kyle. He deserves our praise. This is not something I would have expected from J.B. Pritzker. And it may be concerning, because if J.B. Pritzker is realizing how bad the pension problem in the state, and he wants to do something about it and wants to fix the Edgar ramp, then
must mean it's pretty bad.
we're really up a creek without a paddle.
I mean, especially considering there's no way he's running again in 4 years. So really, you're talking about problems for the budget that he's probably not going to have to face. He will for the next few years, but with the bonds falling off in 2030, that's obviously going to really help. And in 33, assuming you don't then just turn around and spend it. But as Patrick said, the pain here is especially towards 2045, and certainly Pritzker won't be governor at that point. So again, it's pretty rare to see politicians nowadays actually look forward and try to address problems that are going to be coming down the road. Now, this is a statement, right? Let's see what actually happens, because Pritzker has in the past made me very excited and made me give him praise. And then the legislature passes it and he goes, well, I didn't want it, but they passed it, so I'm going to sign it anyways. He has played that before, so I'm giving him credit now, but let's see how he actually plays this. If he stays strong and continues to be a fiscally responsible voice in the room and pushes this towards a responsible solution, I will continue to give him praise, because it's earned, and I'll give praise where it's due. If he pulls a Pritzker and says the right things in public and then privately gives the unions everything, and again, certain unions give them everything they want, and then just publicly says, well, my hands were tied, they passed it, so I have to sign it, I will scream very, very loudly about Pritzker being the hypocrite that he constantly is. But this is one time. Prove me wrong, JB. Prove me wrong. All right. Looks like we've hit pensions. And if you haven't seen it, go check out Rob Martwick's and Mark Batnick's op-ed. Again, I think this one might be Daily Herald, or it could have been
Cranes.
Cranes. Was it Cranes? Okay, thanks. Where they talk about a market-based fixed. Oh yeah, Cranes. There we go. Market-based fix for Chicago's police and fire pensions, giving them the same opportunity to do the buyouts that at the state level have proven to lower the pension obligations by the state by giving people choice. Pretty smart plan and something Chicago should consider. All right, let's talk. We can do this briefly because I know we're running low on time, but I've heard a number of people complain about the session down in Springfield, and I have complained about the session down in Springfield, where it used to be they actually planned things so you could go down and participate in House hearings in session and Senate hearings in session, but everyone was looking at the schedule this year going, what the heck is that? Because they basically decoupled and made it incredibly inconvenient for anybody who does business in Springfield, and more importantly, made it super inconvenient for any citizens who want to go down and interact with their government, because now they can only get one of the two chambers at a time, at least for many of these weeks. And so I've heard a lot of people ask, why did they do this? So I asked some smart people over the last week, why is this? This seems so crazy. And they made it click in my head. And I wish I had figured it out myself, but I'm not smart enough, I'll admit it, to have figured this out myself. But once they said it, I was like, oh, duh, that's why they do it. Because of the ethics law that was passed that does not allow candidates who are running for office at the state level or for state office, does not allow either incumbents or candidates for those positions to host fundraisers the day before, the day during, or the day after session. By making sure there's basically always session in the lead up to the primary, you help your incumbents and you help your candidates, because they're still going to be able to raise money from these lobbyists. These lobbyists are going to cut checks and put them in the mail. You don't need to host a fundraiser to make that happen. This hurts candidates who want to run for office by making it that much harder for them to be able to raise money. That's why Harmon and Welsh did this. And politically, I say, all right, I mean, game recognizes game. I can understand when somebody makes a good political play. It's horrible government. It's really bad ethically, I think. But at least now, those of you who are watching this understand why the session was scheduled the way that it was. It was to screw candidates and keep them from being able to raise money so that they can't take on the candidates that Springfield, that Welsh and Harmon actually want to have win, because they could just go and drop their money into those candidates. So that's why, if you're wondering why the session schedule is so weird.
This is funny because it's kind of like a nuclear bomb versus a coughing baby, because there's not a lot of high profile challenges to incumbents this year on the Democratic side. There's one in the House, 1.5 if you really want to stretch it. And yeah, on the Republican side, Tom DeVore's all over the place. Who knows what's going on there? But on the Democratic side, I don't really, I mean, I know why they're doing it. What you're telling me, Colin, makes 100% sense. It's just like,
isn't this like the Katie Stewart Protection Act? Like, this is what Democrats do. It's all politics all the time, and they will bring a nuclear bomb to a knife fight, and that's basically what this is. But that's how Springfield operates. It's people who don't understand Springfield or maybe haven't been able to work in other state capitals. It's very rare to have states like this where the legislature is literally 99% politics and 1% governing. Usually there's at least a little bit more governing, but not in Springfield. It's all politics all the time.
It's just it's the typical like facade of ethics that we see out of Springfield, because you can still text people, you can still call people, you can still send them a letter and say, hey, donate to my campaign. There's, a million ways to raise money. You just can't have a fundraiser on a day they're in session. Well, okay, that's fine. I mean, it's just stupid.
Well, I like talking about ethics, but then when they pass something like having an inspector general who can't actually inspect anybody, it all sounds great until you actually look at the nuts and bolts and realize it's all fake. All right. With that, we're going to move to our news you can use. This is our section we go through quickly. We're trying to equip our audience with things you need to be aware of. Obviously, anybody in the panel who has thoughts after I give the details, feel free to jump in. Just please do so fast. I will do my part fast. We're going to start with some bad bills. Let's talk about House Bill 4459. You've seen this get some play over the last few days. LaSalle County Democrat Murray Briel, the one who makes Lance Yednock look like a very, very, very conservative Republican, has put forward a bill that not only wants to charge you a permit in order to have a campfire or any sort of open fire on your property. But even more egregiously, wants to fine you up to $100,000 for doing so on a normal day, and up to $500,000 to do so on a day where it's a no open fire day, I think they call it. And hilariously, Briel said, "Oh, these are inaccurate. This is inaccurate news. People are making stuff up," but then admitted, "But yeah, I'm working on an amendment." Like, yeah, okay, so you're admitting you drafted this wrong. She said, "Oh, some drafting errors." Nobody cares. You put this bill through. She deserves to be attacked for it. This is absolutely going to be used in the general election, and frankly, should be used statewide, because this is very telling of Democrats in the state of Illinois, that are always going to find ways to charge you more money. And that's the direction HRO went, where it was like, oh, they're going to charge you to have a bonfire in your backyard, or to have I think they were talking about a fire pit, which isn't in the bill, but whatever. Have some fun with it. It's fine. It's marketing. That's fine, because that's always
No, that's lying. That's what that is. That's not
It's always
marketing. That's lying.
Yeah, okay, that's called, both sides do that. So attack the Democrats.
Doesn't make it right on either side.
Political
the
podcast.
way that I understand
Hey,
this
it's not your show, Patrick. Not your show. So you can talk when I'm done. So the direction HRO was going was that they'd have to pay a fee for this. What I would suggest is focusing more on the fine. Because the point here is less the $5 or whatever it is they have to pay for the permit. The point more is that if you do this without government permission, they could fine you $100,000 to $500,000. This is what Democrats do on abortion so well. At least they used to. Personal PAC used to do this, where they used to say, like, Republicans want to jail women. They take it to the extreme. If you want to utilize that tactic effectively on the Republican side, that's what Burial just did here. Said, if you want to have a fire pit without government permission, I'm going to fine you $500,000. That's the angle Democrats would take against Republicans. And if you want to fight fire with fire, pun intended, that's the direction Republicans can take against the Democrats. All right, go ahead. Whine about it, Patrick. Go ahead.
No, my understanding of the bill is that it doesn't have anything to do with campfires, and I think this is being blown out of proportion for something that isn't accurate. When again, Republicans are completely losing the message on the things that actually matter in this legislative session.
You don't think cost of living gets impacted by having to pay for more permits and having to pay more
because you
fines?
don't. It's not actually going to do that, and it's not actually.
Weren't you the guy who just
anyway.
said a couple minutes ago that voters don't pay that close attention? Weren't you the guy who just said that?
I did say that, but it also doesn't give anybody the carte blanche to just blatantly tell lies about it. But then again, that's what national Republicans have been getting away with for a decade now.
That's what Democrats in Illinois have been doing for decades. So
for sure. But that doesn't make it right.
So, and it's not the only bad bill that Briel put through, by the way. I think people should look at this bill she put in that bans. Let me get it right. I got to find the number here. Hold on. I don't know that I have the bill number. Here we go. 4233, which bans healthcare kiosks in most situations, in healthcare situations. She says it's about AI, and she says it's about emergency room placement and priority. But if you look at the wording of the bill, you always got to look at the wording of the bill, not what they claim the bill's about. It essentially bans these healthcare kiosks, which are self-service, they're interactive, and what a lot of doctors' offices and hospitals and clinics are using to streamline administrative tasks to try to lower healthcare costs. So this is another situation where Democrats say they want to lower your cost of living, but this bill, if passed, would actively increase your healthcare costs and your cost of living. Republicans got to do more. We got to do more to point this out, because every cycle Democrats pass bill after bill after bill after bill that make your health insurance and your healthcare more expensive in this state, and we never talk about it. So it's not the only, there's two bad bills by Murray Briel that should be talked about. All right, going to the next one here. Chicago Democrat wants to put yet another mandate on schools. House Bill 4811. It's a pretty short bill. It mandates early start times. Bans early start times. It prohibits a public high school from having a start time earlier than 8:30 a.m. Listen, I'm not involved with this fight over start times, but I can tell you that a lot of school districts around this area have tested earlier start times, later start times, trying to find a way to engage students, especially high school students, in the best possible way. I don't know the facts on that. I don't know the stats on that, but what I do know is I'd like local school districts to be able to make decisions that are best for their kids. There might be school districts in farming communities that need to start earlier or later based on what time of year it is and what things those kids need to do when they're back home. There may be suburban districts that want to start earlier or later. I am sick and tired of Springfield politicians putting these mandates on our school districts and then saying, oh, look, our property taxes are too high. Because you've added hundreds and hundreds of mandates on these school districts that they have to pay for because you don't pay for it. Let's let our local school districts and our local parents and leaders make decisions for their schools and their kids, not Springfield politicians and bureaucrats.
Well, I think like one of the unintended consequences of this would be the impact it's going to have on bus routes, because a lot of school districts have staggered start times because the bus is dropping off kids at the grade school first and then the junior high second, right? So if you can't start until 8:30, then that means you're pushing those start times back for everybody, which means it's a problem.
That's a good angle and a good point, Michael, because a lot of the school districts right now are struggling to recruit bus drivers. So even there might end up being a problem. Good point.
Well, and how would that work with your dual credit classes? I mean, my wife took her CNA class the hour before school. Is that going to affect those seniors from being able to take those dual credit classes in the morning?
Yeah, it's a valid question that clearly has not been asked, and I'm sure this bill goes nowhere, but that's not the point. Democrats want to put forward these bills. Republicans ought to be talking about it. All right, let's go through a couple quick things on Illinois. Let's start here. Lane will bring up the visual up on screen, but Illinois' unemployment rate at 4.6% is the 11th highest amongst U.S. states and the highest of all of our neighboring states. At least this came from IPI. They said that. Actually, I consider Michigan one of our neighboring states, and Michigan on there is higher than us at 5%. But I guess they could get away with it since Lake Michigan is between us. But either way, we are one of the highest in the Midwest. And this is interesting because I remember when IDES put out their December report, and it was, of course, because it's coming from Pritzker's office, they're going to say everything's glowing, everything's fine. So they point to there was an uptick in payroll jobs and in a slight increase in unemployment. And then, of course, Cranes puts out the actual details, which is the Illinois job market loses momentum after year-end slide and talks about how we've lost jobs. And then IPI puts out their thing where we lost 1,700 jobs in 2025, while the nation added almost 600,000 jobs. And so this is yet another situation where the Illinois just says, oh, look, this one number is okay. Everything's fine. Everything's good. Don't worry about it. Don't actually look at the actual details. Andy Manar, who I do think generally for a Democrat does decent, but he says, oh, it's national problems. These are federal problems. But if you look at that map, Lane, bring it up again. Look at that map of unemployment. All these other states also have the same federal problems, so you can't blame all of Illinois' problems just on the federal government. We also have some problems of our own, but of course, with Pritzker administration, it's always somebody else's fault. Next one here. So we talked about this last week, but I did not have a good map for you. So the only reason why we're bringing this up this week again is so you actually have a map that you can use. So Visual Capitalist put this out. Illinois is 47th in population growth in the United States from 2020 to 2025. And again, I talked about this last week. All those people who want to say it's just people leaving the Midwest. Well, look. Illinois, the states that lost population are in red. There we are in red, surrounded by a sea of blue, all states that increased. Now they're light blue. It increased by a bunch. I do understand there is something to be said for people leaving bad weather states. But look at all those states that are further north than us, other than New York. They're all also light blue. They also did increase. So I understand that, yes, people are moving further south, but all those other states found a way to deal with that problem. Illinois and New York couldn't figure out a way to deal with that problem. So stop making excuses and go do something to fix it. All right, this next one's in the weeds. I'm going to do it fast. But Illinois ranked 38th for social mobility. What is social mobility? It's a rank that's developed by economic problems, corruption in the legal system. Basically, the idea is how can you improve your economic and social situation in your state? And this study done by Archbridge Institute had Illinois ranked 36th. 5 Midwestern states were actually in the top quarter nationally. I'll have Lane bring up a map. But of course, Illinois was the lowest in the Midwest at 38th. Here's the other reason why I bring it up, because I've never seen anybody talk about this. I always hear people say, oh, Illinois has too many regulations, but no one's ever quantified it. And this is the first time I've ever seen it quantified. The state of Illinois has the 4th biggest regulatory burden with over 282,000 rules. more than double the average of 135,000. Illinois also issues the second lowest number of permits to build housing among states. The national average is 4.3 per thousand. Illinois is only 1.4 per thousand. So Chris keeps bringing up the lack of affordable housing for young people. Well, one of the major reasons for that is we're not building new homes. And you see that right here in the study. So some of the things I've heard people say, but never back up with data, for the first time, this study actually backed it up with data. So I appreciated that. All right, here we go. Chicago. Brandon Johnson, according to his top mayoral aide, is planning to bring back the Bring Chicago Home referendum that did so well the last time. I'm certainly fine with them bringing it back, but seems like, just like what you see with the millionaire's tax and the progressive tax, when the Democrats in this state are told, no, you can't have more of our money, they don't take that to mean no forever. They just take that to mean, oh, no, until we ask you again 5 minutes from now. So Brandon Johnson wants to try it yet again. Expected a thought from Chris on that, but I think everyone's sort of fallen asleep.
If at first you don't succeed, fail and fail and fail and fail some more. It's the Johnson administration mantra.
There you go. Well done. See, someone had something useful to add. Good job. All right. So this I thought was interesting. The CTA temporary chief, because Johnson hasn't gotten around to actually putting people in some of these agencies in a full-time or a permanent position. The CTA chief actually admitted in a Chicago Tribune article that the reform dollars from the transit reform, air quotes, were actually mostly just for keeping things exactly as they are. The article talked about how daily riders would agree that CTA service has improved since pandemic, but many are still frustrated by the frequency and reliability of buses and trains and nuisance issues. And if you scroll all the way down in the article, you see a quote from this CTA chief who says, here we go. Learson cautioned that most of the new dollars expected to come in later this year will go towards sustaining current service levels. So as we've been telling you ever since this whole debate started, if you think that this money is going towards improving, especially the CTA, yeah, that's actually not what it is. It's just a bailout. Things will stay mostly the same because that's all where that money is going. So if you thought that you were paying higher tolls and higher sales taxes and you were actually going to get something for it, here you go. They're finally admitting you're probably actually not going to get anything for it.
And my fear, Metra, which has been pretty reliable over the years and schedule-wise and service-wise, under this new NIDA board or NIDA board, whatever they're calling it, is actually going to get worse.
It is my fear as well, especially since they've ripped away suburban control and Collar County control.
Imagine if we had real transportation leadership in this state. Be interesting.
Well, especially because in the article, if you read it, I encourage you to do so. They talk about how New York has actually rebounded from, they have now 85% of their pre-pandemic ridership. Meanwhile, Chicago's still at 70% of their 2019 levels. So again, people want to say like, oh, it's just we're dealing with COVID. You got to compare to other states. And New York's found a way to get back to 85%, whereas Chicago's still at 70%. A lot of other states, when you look at bigger cities, they found a way to rebound significantly more than Chicago has. So I'm sick and tired of excuses. I would really like our elected officials to actually go out and do something and make something better. All right, last couple here. Well, this is the last negative one. Then I got a couple quick positive ones. So let's talk about government. There's two stories over the last week that point to just how much Illinois government is stuck in the 1900s. There was a story in the Tribune about how the Cook County court clerk is piloting an electronic traffic ticket system, and just saying how amazing this will be, where people can go online and pay their tickets for the first time. It's a pilot program. And I'm like, is this 1999? Is this 2005? Where it's like, ooh, this is so cool. The internet is new. Like every other sector of our economy is like, yeah, people have been paying online for 20, 30 years. I've been paying my trash bills. Everyone's paying their bills online. But here we go. Cook County government, Cook County courts are like, look at this cool new thing we're doing. We're going to let you pay your tickets online. Isn't that so exciting? There was another story. Leader McCombie put forward a bill to finally, because I know that some organizations have been pushing for this, like BGA, rightfully so, to finally have the state put legislative proceedings online. And part of it was they'd only be available for 30 days. I'll give Capital Facts credit. They asked Tony why only 30 days, and they were told that LIS pushed back because of a lack of storage capability, that all they could handle was 30 days. Like, seriously? I think that's going to make Abe, our data wizard, just roll over when he hears this. Like, even the state of Illinois is so far behind. Like, well, we can't put this stuff online because we don't have the storage capability. Like, it is 2026, guys. It is time to catch up. I'm sick and tired of how horse and buggy government is in this stinking state. All right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is DOIT, which goes back to the Rauner administration, which has never gotten off to a good start. I mean, the Department of Innovation and Technology, it's just never seemed to be an agency that has its stuff together.
And while I would agree as to the start date of that agency, who's been governor for the last 6 years and could have done something about it?
I was just saying that it dated back to the Rauner administration. Now, I will crap on Bruce Rauner all day long if you let me, but I'm just saying that it's not just a Pritzker thing. It dates back to Rauner.
Pritzker had 6 years to do something about it. All right, couple positive things because it's just been really, really negative today. So a couple quick positive things that I want to point out. Number one, I saw this in the Patch of all places, so good job to the Patch. They referenced a new ranking from Time, which identified the top universities in the world. I think it was the top 500 universities in the world, and 6 of them are in Illinois. As a matter of fact, the U.S. has 13 of the top 20, and you know how these rankings from places like Time want to seem more fair. So they're going to look for opportunities to put any of these universities from other countries higher on the list. Is the fact that even with that, the U.S. had 13 out of 20, Illinois of the top 20, and Illinois had 6 of the top 500. University of Chicago at 5, Northwestern at 98, U of I at 151. University of Illinois Chicago at 151, U of I at 235, Illinois Institute of Technology at 266, SIU at 338. This is something to be proud of, especially in Illinois. One of the few things we still have going for us is our upper education system, even in some cases our secondary education system, our workforce development, our workers. There are reasons why Illinois should be successful, and this is one of them. It's a cool thing to see 6 of the top 500 universities in the world are right here in Illinois.
Well, I'm upset that Loyola didn't make it. I have solace in the fact that Paul didn't make it either, so we both suck, I guess.
There you go. All right, last thing here, U.S. life expectancies hit an all-time high, thanks to our friend John Giacaris for posting this. That's where I saw it. In 2024, U.S. life expectancy hit an all-time high. They don't have the numbers yet for 2025, but they are predicting, based on the numbers that they see, that it will be even higher. So we'll set a new record there, with heart disease, cancer, drug overdoses all declining. Obviously, being past COVID also helps. So good news again to end our podcast, because every once in a while I like to actually have a little bit of positivity here. All right, with that, we will close down with our OG and Clown of the Week segment. Anybody you guys want to give praise to, give some scorn to, here's your chance.
I saw one of the clips you didn't mention of Pritzker over the last week on one of these far left podcasts. He made a comment about how he's really been working hard to lower cost for working families in the state of Illinois, but people from the far right and hedge fund managers have gotten in his way. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize we were putting up such a good fight here, but apparently we're pretty darn good.
Yeah, you know what? I meant to mention that, but I'm glad you got a chance to bring it up during the Clowns of the Week
So he's
segment.
got to be a clown for that.
Yeah,
Plus he's still Nazi, 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 Nazi. He's just obsessed with like Nazi Germany, and he thinks in his demented mind that he's still living through round 2 or something.
Well, I'll focus more on the first part of that, just because I really want to rant on that myself. This J.B. Pritzker on that podcast literally was like, he was the lower tax crusader. I'm making things more affordable. I'm lowering taxes for people. And it just, it was Ken Griffin and those billionaires who stopped me. It's like, come on, this guy, again, because he's never really challenged. He just lives in this world where he can say whatever the heck he wants. And everyone's like, oh, that's so amazing. It's not working for him. He's not going to be president. But it is frustrating to live in this world where Pritzker just says whatever. He's apparently the low-tax crusader. What else you guys got?
I want to give a shout out to Union Signs and Printing in Joliet. Well, during the recording of this podcast last week, it went up in flames. And a lot of good candidates lost their yard signs, lost their walk cards, and also the business lost its life. Union Signs and Printing was never the best print shop. It was never often the cheapest, but it also provided good services for a lot of small candidates throughout the Southland area. If you've ever been in the city of Chicago and you've seen a pick up your dog shit sign, I am 99% sure it was printed at Union Signs and Printing. So it is a loss for candidates across the Chicagoland area, and it is a loss for the culture of the Chicagoland area. So Union Signs and Printing, until we see each other on the other side, my friend.
I got an OG. I surprised you guys by saying something nice about Pritzker. I'll surprise you even further by saying something nice about another Democrat. Listen, I get it. We've had people on this podcast who are trying to take out Mike Halpin in was it 48, I think, and I'm all for
36.
that. 36, thank you. I'm all for that. But when someone does something good, I've always been honest and fair on this podcast. He put forward Senate Bill 2804, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is this on streaming platforms, because there are no rules, they're able to make these commercials like 3 times louder than the actual program, which is just so frustrating. And he put forward a bill that would make that illegal here in Illinois. And I know some people say big government, blah, 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 but you know what? It makes people's lives better, and that's why Democrats win elections in Illinois, because they do things like this that help make people's lives better. So kudos. I think the bill is great. And I really would love it if we lived in a world where I didn't have to sit here constantly lowering the volume by 50% every time a dang commercial comes on.
So for OG, I constantly rip on Republicans in the state for missing the message on cost of living. The one group that's actually trying to get it right is the House Republican organization, the campaign arm of the House Republicans. Essentially, every press release they put out has some sort of tie to cost of living and affordability. The hook here is just getting their candidates and members to actually buy into that message too. So they're saying and writing the right things, but I don't know that the caucus is totally bought in yet. Hopefully they will be. In terms of clowns, I'm going to call out all 3 members of the state's congressional delegation, Republican congressional delegation, Mike Boss, Darren LaHood, and the completely worthless Mary Miller, who are continuing to sow doubt in the validity of our elections in this state by trying to press the state board of elections on voter data, which it doesn't fall under their purview at all. They're just trying to suck up to the Trump administration in any way that they can. Boston LaHood certainly know better, and it's disappointing that they continue to play stupid political games over an issue that makes Republicans look really bad. That they continue to deny the 2020 election and sow doubt in the validity of elections as they take place in this state and country.
Anybody else have OGs? I mean, this is a chance for a candidate to call out their super volunteer maybe and, give them some praise. I'm just saying, or someone who's endorsed them, call them out, which dual purpose gives you a little pat yourself. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Colin. I'll throw in, throughout this district, I will say the young Republicans have done a phenomenal job with getting things done on a local level within the 17th. Also, we have a ton of endorsements that are going to come out, but there are a ton of people. Really, what surprised me the most, and I want to highlight them: Peoria's GOP is phenomenal. McLean County's great, but Winnebago has really stepped up their game here this last 12 months that I've been involved. I'm excited for what they've done and what they're going to continue to do. And my real OG spotlight is a guy that has absolutely busted his tail this last several months, and that's Josh Higgins for the 94th. Great guy, great candidate. Things are looking good for him in the 94th, and he's going to continue to work his tail off.
I've got some clowns on my end, and obviously you guys can continue to jump in, but I'll get mine out of the way so we can finish up our segment. Obviously, if you did not watch the first segment from the show, jump back because 3 of my clowns are already mentioned in that first segment from the podcast, but I won't be duplicative, so feel free to go back if you missed that. I'd like to call out corruption, especially when it's stealing from taxpayers. So I got to go to Dawson Township in Clark County. The charges have been filed from somebody from the township office, Kimberly Grable. who stole, let me get the number here, $162,500 from township funds. That we get so desensitized to corruption. Let me just give you context. Dolson Township has about 350 people in it. So think of the astronomical number here, over 160 grand that this individual stole in 2025 from a township that only has 350 people in it. Throw the book at them. They deserve it. Clown of the week, clown of the month, clown of the millennium. Here we go. So clown is also the I don't know how to word this and make this actually fit within the segment, but Lane will bring it up on screen. Michael found this, that the Epstein files actually mention Peoria, Illinois. There's an individual from Peoria who was in Peoria, Illinois, and said, complaining about, Lane will bring it up, you can read it, complaining about having to be in Peoria, and Epstein was like, sorry you had to be in Peoria. Like this idea, you've got to understand, Illinoisans, how the East Coast and the West Coast looks at these flyover states. They hate even having to be in our state. So please look at that and understand. This is why I get so frustrated when we don't seek to be better, when we let them win, let them treat us like secondary citizens. And then we're like, oh, it's okay. This mediocrity, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being 36th or 40th or 45th. Like, can we push to be the world-class city and the world-class state that I know we can be? Stop acting like the flyover state they treat us like. All right, here we go. I'm going to really get myself in trouble, but whatever, I don't care. Tom DeVore in a social media post posted AD, or Aaron Delmar, and I riding around and listening to the gospel. Lane will show the images on screen. It was a song being played by Chris Tomlin, and I was trying to be good about this. I've been holding my tongue, but this is the last straw for me. This Aaron Delmar is suddenly like this big gospel music watching, Christian music watching, I'm going to pray in public kind of person. He's never, ever been that individual prior to hooking up with Darren Bailey and running for governor. And listen, I'm all for people to pursue and act on their faith in any way that they'd like. My faith's very important to me. I get it. But what I hate is people running for office who pretend to be something that they're not because they think they're going to get a vote for it. This is fake, and it's so frustrating as somebody who actually grew up listening to Christian music in the 90s and the 2000s, and I could actually name for you Chris Tomlin songs, and I guarantee you Aaron cannot. Stop faking it. Stop pretending to be like Darren Bailey. Just be yourself, please. Sick and tired of fake politicians. Last one here, Chris, let's see if you agree with me on this one, but the Chicago White Sox. They put out a Black History Month post talking about some awesome things that have happened in Chicago history, or in White Sox history, where they've seen people like Minnie Minoso and others break barriers, and it's awesome. Prominent black players, managers, executives, which is great, but they missed Frank Thomas entirely. And I guess, the young kid in the social media department could miss something. Sure, maybe that could happen, but this was not an accident. There's been a divorce between Frank Thomas and the White Sox that's been growing. And even when this was brought up, Paul Sullivan in the Tribune, the Sun-Times did a piece, a bunch of people commented on social media. They never changed it. They still haven't changed it. Frank Thomas is like, fine, whatever, I'm done with them. But come on. One of the greatest players, if not the greatest player in White Sox history, you snub him. Maybe it was a mistake. I don't think it was, but maybe it was a mistake. Make right by the guy, even if you're not best buds anymore. Could you just have a little bit of class? White Sox, I'm sick and tired of just these low-class actions. I want to cheer for my team, but you keep making me almost as depressed to be a White Sox fan as I am to be a Republican.
Look, things have been going so well for the White Sox. I know we lost 100 games 3 straight seasons, but things are looking up. And then the ownership, the administration has to do something so stupid that completely turns everything back around and say, ha ha, look at the stupid White Sox again. It's ridiculous. So listen, we're gonna put this behind us. We're gonna go out there. We're gonna win 72 games this year. And we're going to have a little bit of fun before we're not allowed to play baseball anymore in 2027 because the Dodgers took all the players. So, yeah, I agree with you, Colin. I do.
All right, closing thoughts, closing comments. We'll let our team go first, let our guests go last. Michael, looks like you're out and about with a bunch of people, so why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, we only have a few days left till this primary gets here. It gets closer every time we do one of these things. So Make sure you're getting your signs out, you're talking to your voters, because it seems like most people don't even know there's an election. And like we said throughout this episode, the Democrats keep doing stupider and stupider things on a daily basis, and it's up to us to get that message out and take advantage of it, because otherwise it's not going to be a good year.
Chris, what do you got?
So when you're watching this, you'll be in the 30s, 39 days until election day. And if you haven't done anything yet, you're screwed. It is time for everybody should be knee deep into their field right now. Everybody should be knee deep in fundraising right now. Everybody's got to get off the rear ends and actually put in the work. Because let me tell you something. If you got a primary and you're not putting in the work and you're just expecting to just walk into this thing and you're going to have a chance in the general election, I got news for you, pal. You got no chance. The primary sets you up for the general election. You got 39 days left. Put the pedal to the metal, build your field program, build your war chest, build your campaign team, or else you have no chance when it comes to November. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. We'll let our candidate go last. So, Patrick, your closing thoughts.
So we're 6 weeks, less than 6 weeks from Election Day, and it has been just an incredibly underwhelming primary thus far. Not only at the top of the ticket with the Democratic race for U.S. Senate and the Republican race for governor, but all the way down the line. And I'm hopeful that some of these candidates can get their acts together. I look at the 118th district for reference to that in this conversation, where you have three guys left on the ballot to replace Paul Jacobs, who's likely going to the Senate. Everyone kind of assumed Joe DuBose was the front runner in that race when he dropped out a couple of weeks ago. So you've got three candidates, three Republicans, a former radio host named Scott Duty, an Army veteran named Dayton Lloyd, and a contractor named Harold Visser. In a pretty heavily Republican district, you would think three guys could put together professional campaigns. They could raise some money. They could do the work. When they filed at the end of the year, nobody had any money. Duty had $3,400 in the bank. Visser had $530, and I couldn't even find a campaign committee for Lloyd. If you're going to run for office, be serious about it. I'm tired of people who seem to think that they don't have to do the work, and it's frustrating up and down the ticket and up and down the ballot in both parties that there, I don't know if it's a sense of entitlement or just a lack of understanding of how to put together professional campaigns. But this has been a really underwhelming and frustrating election cycle for me thus far.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that. All right, Dylan, I'd like to say that I'm giving you the final word because you're a candidate or you brought the heat. But the reality is I just really like that you've got an excellent TR quote behind you. So that alone earns you the final word. So what do you got, man?
I appreciate it. So my 9-year-old has been chomping at the bit. He always wants to jump in on these.
What's up, buddy?
Vote for my dad.
There you go.
Not trained at all, right? He's been chomping at the bit. So thanks, bud. Well, no, again, guys, I appreciate you having me on. It is crazy to think that it's been a year. Time flies by when you're having fun. We're going to continue to ramp things up. But we've got a good chance at the 17th. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's an uphill battle. And we've got a lot of work to go yet. Get through March 17th and really start priming things up for November.
Nice. Well, with that, we're going to close down the episode. Thank you to Lane Davis, our producer. Thank you to our guests and our panel. Remember, guys, as we record this February 5th on Thursday, you're going to watch it on the 6th. Early voting has begun in Illinois. So as Patrick said, as Chris said, as Michael said, and even a bit as Dylan said, get off your butts and go. If you want to win, be worthy of the win. Work and earn the win. Let's go already. Catch you guys next week.